part of getting under contract is being terrified since it's my first time going through
There you go.
this. I hate to admit, but it's been 3 months, I think. The attorney keeps asking me questions that I don't really know the answers to.
I made the mistake of sourcing a referral from somebody, but it was a big shot corporate attorney. Brother, I ended up paying like 13, 14 grand. Now, yeah, insanity. I didn't need some big shot corporate New York attorney to handle this transaction on my behalf. In fact, a big learning lesson was that I almost completely fumbled the bag, as the kids would say. The attorneys going back and forth, it was like 2 months of redlining back and forth. It almost killed the deal. Have you ever got a self-storage facility under contract or any piece of real estate under contract with the intention to wholesale it so that you can generate a bunch of cash, but you kind of get tripped up and you get stuck with the timeline, the process? It all kind of feels fuzzy and hairy. You're not quite sure when to do what action, when to call this person. How does it work with the escrow agent or the title company? When do you start having conversations with buyers, the communication with sellers? So if you don't have any experience or you just want to kind of tighten up your game when it comes to wholesaling your very first self-storage facility or wholesaling your next storage facility, then this video, this training is going to be for you, because Dan, who we have now taken through, I think Dan and I on the Storage Wins podcast of season 2, I think this is about, I don't know what, 5-6 months into this journey, brother. And Dan has a deal that he has been working on for several months. And the challenge is that the timeline has been extended, and I'll have Dan kind of share and bring us up to speed with where we're at in the deal. But Dan has gotten a little bit tripped up in terms of the timeline, working with attorneys, like how the whole process works when you're working with a seller and essentially trying to get that storage facility under contract. So what I thought I'd do was, let's put a pause in the flow of the season 2 series. And I want to be able to serve Dan and at the same time help you, because at some point you may decide that you want to wholesale a storage facility so that you can generate a bunch of cash. And I've wholesaled numerous storage facilities, and I've generated anywhere from $25,000 on the low end all the way up to $150,000 on the high end. And I know people that have generated even more in terms of wholesale fees. So with that being said, Dan, brother, first off, welcome back to the podcast, man. I know that you had your baby back in late November, early December, obviously the holidays, and now you're kind of getting things ramped up again. So with that being said, if you could, in a minute or two, especially for those who might be joining us for the first time or who aren't quite sure with where you're at in your journey, don't give us a recap of your journey, but I want a recap of where you're at with this deal and what particular challenges you're facing, so that we can help get you unstuck, give you some clarity, and then give you a plan of action moving forward.
Yeah, so it's a facility in North Carolina. It's a smaller facility. I've been working with the smaller being really small, like 5,000 square feet-ish, maybe 7,000. And I've been working with an attorney. I have a contract that's been written up, and I've sent the contract to the seller. We've been going back and forth on a couple things on the contract, and not having gone through this process before, the attorney keeps asking me questions that I don't really know the answers to. And so that's kind of where it is right now.
Okay, got it. Now, just for context and perspective, how long have you been working with the seller of this storage facility to just put like ink to paper and get this facility under contract?
From the first time I spoke with him.
Well, yeah. How long have you been working on the deal? Like from the point that you guys agreed on a number, how long has it been between then and now?
I hate to admit, but it's been 3 months, I think.
Okay.
2 to 3 months.
Okay, which is not typical, by the way. That is not common. I would say this is an anomaly. Once you agree on a price, there's no way that it should take 3 months before you get the deal inked and under contract. And if you could tell us succinctly, what are some of the hiccups, hurdles, or obstacles that have gotten in the way of you getting this facility under contract?
It's been different phrases and verbiage on the contract and what to make sure I have in there. Um,
Okay.
Part of getting under contract is being terrified, since it's my first time going through
There you go.
this,
Yeah.
that it's gonna say something that after it's like signed, wet ink on paper, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm legally bound to do
Okay.
something that I
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to do.
Got it. So this has been, and man, you've acknowledged it. This is more a function of fear that has taken over, and I think to a certain degree you're overthinking this process. Now, look, here's the disclaimer, which I know you know what I'm about to say, but I am not an attorney. I cannot give you like legal or financial advice. So this is an experience share from the deals that I've wholesaled and working with other wholesalers, even people within the storage wins community that have wholesale deals. I mean, you and I know somebody that, what, 9, 10 months ago had never wholesaled a deal and now has wholesaled 4 storage deals, 3 of them to people inside the storage wins community. So I totally get that when you don't know something and you haven't been through the process, naturally you're going to have some fear, some uncertainty. It can be common to overthink things. And my goal with this particular episode is not just to help everybody listening, but I want to help you. I want to give you clarity, confidence, help get you unstuck. And so just know that it's not typical and common for it to take this long. Now, having said that, I also know that you were going back and forth with the owner. It's an older gentleman from what I remember. He doesn't have email. Everything has been through snail mail. You sent him an agreement and he didn't receive it, and then you had to overnight it. And so there's been a lot of inefficiencies in terms of that process. And so that's contributed to the timeline and to the length here with the 3 months. Now, having said that, I want to let's start to pick apart the questions that you have, and let's start to answer and give you more clarity around, because I know that you're confused with the timeline, the process, when certain things have to happen. And I think one of the first questions you had was regards to working with an attorney, because my understanding is from what you've shared with me, the attorney you're working with is billing you hourly. And I feel like you're kind of getting bled to death here.
Yep.
Okay,
I feel
got
that
it.
way too.
All right, so this is a short, quick, simple one. My personal experience, I would never, ever, ever advise. I hate to speak in absolutes. This might qualify. I can't think of a reason I would choose to pay an attorney hourly. Now, unless he or she quoted me something extremely outrageous, then that just wouldn't be my attorney. I would find somebody else, right? But you always, 99.999% of the time, pay a flat fee. And you don't want to enter into the agreement without knowing what that number is. So I always like to just go ahead and ask attorneys. I say, hey, can you, by the way, let me preface this statement by sharing that you would have already done the homework, and I know that's a question you have. You would have already done the homework to identify a title company or an escrow agent, depending on what state you're located in, that has experience in dealing with commercial real estate. Ideally, a title company, an escrow agent, an attorney that has closed self-storage facilities and that understands some of the nuances that go into closing it. Now, any reputable title company should be able to close a self-storage facility, no problem. But I don't want to just jump on Google or ChatGPT and just pick any random title company. You would have, once you go under contract, you already have an idea of an escrow agent or a title company in that state, which is always what I recommend. And if you don't, you shouldn't have a hard time finding one that's, I don't want to say investor friendly, but somebody who has experience in commercial real estate. Between the day you go under contract and the next 24 to 48 hours, you should be able to locate one that you're comfortable with. Now, as a pro tip, Dan, here's some quick tips, some things that can help you find and locate the right escrow agent. Is number one, you can talk to any other self-storage owners and operators in that particular state. If you jump onto the Storage Wins Facebook group, if you're not a part of the community, obviously in your case, Dan, you're a part of the community, so you could drop a question inside of our school platform, and you can likely get a recommendation there. And even if it's not there, you can jump into our Facebook group, other storage Facebook groups, ask the question, and you should be able to get at least 2, 3, 4, 5 recommendations on title companies and attorneys in the state. Okay. Now, you have a virtual assistant. So I never want to hear you in this position again. It would be worth it for your virtual assistant to create a simple Google spreadsheet and locate 2 to 3 title companies / escrow agents in every state in the country. So that whenever you get your next deal, you just go to your database of escrow agents or title companies, and boom, you already have 2 to 3 per state. Now, you're probably not going to get that overnight. It might take your VA some time to put that together, but that's the classic dig your well before you're thirsty. Because when you get a deal, you want to operate with precision. Timing is of the essence. You want to act like a pro. You don't want to be scrambling here, trying to source, hey, what title company, escrow agent. Now, look, I'm not going to lie and say that that's always been the case. I wholesaled. I remember my very first storage deal that I wholesaled with a few friends of mine was in Ohio. I didn't have an escrow agent in Ohio, but between myself and them, we were able to find somebody, I think within a 24-hour period. We called them, we asked them some basic questions, we kind of interviewed them, and we felt comfortable that, hey, this was our title company and escrow agent. And I'm always going to recommend that you control the agent who's getting the deal closed. I don't want the seller to choose the agent. Now, look, if it's a deal breaker, then I wouldn't let that kill the deal. I would still have you, if you were the end buyer, have your attorney represent you in the transaction. But let's start there, because that was one of your questions, right?
Yeah.
Before I get to the hourly versus the flat fee, which I've already given you the answer, but I'd like to elaborate on that. Before we jump into that, do you have any follow-up questions on when should you have an escrow agent identified or a title company? Like, what does that process look like? What are some of the things you can do even before you get there? Like anything that you want me to clarify or elaborate on?
No, not that I can think of. That
Okay.
covers it.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, look, between the relationships you've built inside of the Storage Wins coaching community, the different storage Facebook groups you're in, the other storage operators, you can even reach out to storage brokers. Like we've had some of the best storage brokers come on to our community calls and present. If you didn't build a relationship with them at that point, you can always call them. It's easy. You can get their contact information from inside of our school community. Reach out to them. Hey, my name is Dan Wenzel. I'm part of the Storage Wins community. If you don't remember, you came on and shared. I have a relationship with them, so you can mention my name. Say, hey, listen, I have a deal that I'm working on getting under contract, and I'm looking for a title company or an escrow agent in this state. You obviously you have a lot of experience. Is there anybody that you might be able to recommend? So you can ask brokers, you can ask wholesalers, you can also ask storage owner operators that are in that state. Okay? Now, yeah, go ahead then.
Is there a typical cost is it like a per deal cost, or is it a percentage of the deal or amount of earnest money that's being deposited?
No, so nothing is going to be paid up front. So attorneys, title companies, they usually charge what's called a settlement fee. Okay, and a settlement fee is, now they're going to earn money on title insurance, but really the money they're making is not just on the title insurance, if they're the ones issuing the title insurance, but the settlement fee. And the settlement fee can range from $500 to $1,000. I would say, generally speaking, is going to probably cover most. Like, look, I'm working on a deal now that the settlement fee is $950, but because of the relationship, they've discounted it to $750. Now, I didn't ask for that discount. I don't nickel and dime the professionals that I work with. I pay their fee, as long as it's within reason, of course. If it was like a $2,000 settlement fee, I wouldn't be paying that unless there was some complexity to the deal that was discussed ahead of time. But settlement fees are going to range, I would say, by and large, $500 to $1,000. Now, that is not paid up front. Unless you're paying hourly, I don't see a reason you should be paying a title company or an escrow agent really anything up front. That is paid at closing.
Yeah, that's so confusing
Okay, that is paid at
co-
closing.
compared to what my experience has been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, in terms of the question, should you pay hourly or a flat fee? I'm going to just go ahead and say, even though I hate to speak in absolutes, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to say never pay hourly. 99.9% of the time, don't pay hourly, pay a flat fee, and just ask them and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Attorney, can you just quote me a flat fee to review and mark up this contract, including a couple of follow-up calls if necessary, or including a follow-up call? You know, one of the things that I like whenever I speak to an attorney or somebody who I think I may work with in the future is I always want to position myself as a value to them. What do I mean by that, Dan? I'm, you know what I'm about to say because of obviously you being a part of our community and you know my mindset. I'm always thinking relationally. I'm never thinking transactionally. And I also want to make sure that the title company, the attorney, the escrow agent, the appraiser, whoever's involved in the deal, understands that I'm thinking long term. I'm never thinking short term. So when I call them, I don't just flat out call them and say, hey, my name is Alex Pardo. I'm working on this deal. Can you quote me a flat fee to review and mark up this title or this contract? No. Hey, Dan, my name is Alex Pardo. You were actually highly recommended by this person. What did I do? I just dropped a little mini compliment for them. I'm a self-storage investor, owner operator. I'm working on this deal. I'm looking to build a long-term relationship with a reputable title company in this particular state because I'm looking at growing a storage portfolio here. I'm looking at doing a lot of deals. What am I doing in the ears of that person? They see opportunity, right? And so I'm planting a seed with them that I'm thinking of going long term with them. I'm not looking for just one transaction. And then I'll say, hey, listen, as a starting point, I'm in the process of just connecting with a few title companies in the area because I really want to find the right fit, and I'd like for somebody to represent me in this transaction. Here's big picture what I'm looking at. I'm working with the seller. I'm going to be putting it under contract, and I'm going to be looking to find the buyer to take my place in exchange for a fee. Okay. Or whatever that maybe you were the end buyer, whatever the structure of the deal is, whatever you're looking to accomplish, let them know. Can you just quote me a flat fee to review the purchase and sale agreement that I have? Okay. And then, maybe a follow-up call or two, or whatever you think. Usually 1 or 2 follow-up calls should be fine. But essentially, you just want to agree on a flat fee. And man, again, I'm not an attorney, and this is going to vary by state and, by attorney, they're going to charge different things. But I would say to review an agreement on the very low end, you're probably looking at $300 to $500 on the low end to maybe $1,500 to $2,000 on the high end. Maybe. And that's if it's like, depending on, like I said, the complexity of the deal and maybe the market. But to review an agreement, a very simple purchase and sale agreement, you're probably looking at somewhere in that range. Look, don't make the mistake I made. My second deal, which was the first deal I bought, the one in Mississippi that you know of, the 43,000 square foot facility, that was a little bit more complex because I agreed to purchase the business that owned the self-storage facility. And there were some nuances involved, and the seller was going to be saving a lot of money on taxes. And so we agreed to buy the business. So there was multiple entities involved. The business owned the entity that the storage facility was under. And so there was some complexities. I made the mistake of sourcing a referral from somebody, but it was a big shot corporate attorney, like who worked in a big skyscraper in New York. Brother, I ended up paying I think it was like 13, 14 grand.
Whoa.
Now, yeah, insanity. I was anxious. I shouldn't say anxious. I was excited. It was my first storage deal I was going to be buying. I was buying the business, first time going through it. So I totally get where you're at in terms of feeling like, man, this is kind of like getting a little out of control for me. I agreed to that flat fee because there was a lot involved in the process. I was bringing on an equity partner. I was getting SBA financing. I was buying the business. The seller had an attorney that was representing them. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. Now, I think I felt like I overpaid. I didn't need some big shot corporate New York attorney to handle this transaction on my behalf. In fact, a big learning lesson was that I almost completely fumbled the bag, as the kids would say. The attorneys going back and forth, it was like 2 months of redlining back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It almost killed the deal. It
Yeah,
completely
that's
almost. So the attorney works for you. You don't work for the attorney. Make sure an attorney is there to protect you, not to destroy and kill the deal. So for a very small storage facility, there is absolutely no reason that you should be going back and forth a million times with red lines and an attorney. Because I think the problem is that when you agree to an hourly rate, what happens? It benefits the attorney that this get extended because they're going to make more money. That's not in your best interest. This is a very, very simple transaction. Now, I always do recommend, now look, I know some people that don't work with attorneys when they're sending a purchase and sale agreement. Generally speaking, they're in the experience side, right? But I recognize this is your first deal, and I can't in good conscience tell you, hey, don't work with an attorney, because I want to make sure that you're protected. And I can't give you any legal advice, and I can just share with you from my experience. But the learning lesson for you is don't ever agree to an hourly rate, agree to a flat fee rate, and it's got to be within reason. If it in your belly, if it feels off, it probably is, and you should check with us. You know, if they give you a flat fee of $5,000, that's high. They give you a flat fee of $1,000, $1,500, okay, probably reasonable. Maybe a little bit on the high side, but probably reasonable.
this was a ready, fire, aim scenario.
Yeah, man. And look, dude, and I think and that's how I tend to operate, ready, fire, aim. More times than not, it works out in my benefit because I'm able to learn quicker. Now, I don't want you to make expensive mistakes, obviously. But I love the fact that you acted quick. You just didn't necessarily know the process because you've never wholesaled the facility before. But believe me, while this is a learning lesson for you, this will absolutely help you moving forward. And
I've learned a lot from it.
because you have a virtual assistant, I would task her is, hey, post in the storage Facebook groups. Start creating a list of investor friendly title companies, attorneys, escrow agents in all the states. I have Mississippi covered for you, by the way, right? I have Florida covered for you, by the way. So you got 2 of the 50 states right there. You have several within the Storage Wins community that have bought storage facilities from Missouri to Illinois to, I mean, different places, right? I think we have New York covered. I mean, there's different states.
Yeah.
Yeah. So man, you probably got 10 states already covered in terms of investor friendly title companies. No, you don't necessarily need to have this list now. But what happens if you go out and you get a deal under contract in Alabama? Now you can just go to your list and say, okay, I'm going to call this title company, let them know that I got this under contract. I'd like to work with them because you've already done that work up front. You dug your well before you were thirsty. Okay?
Yeah. So fun tidbit. My VA quit.
Oh, okay.
But that's a different topic for another day.
All right. No worries, man. So we can talk about that. But look, similar to that, I remember 8, 9, 10 months ago, you were kind of stalling and delaying the process of hiring a VA because you just hadn't gone through that experience. You didn't know how to find them, how to interview them, how to train them. You've now been through that. So you have more confidence. This is no different. Okay? All right. Now, when it comes to the earnest money deposit, the EMD, okay? Depending, usually like 1% of the purchase price, I would say is like a good general rule of thumb, right? 1% of the purchase price. More times than not, I'm putting up, and again, it depends on the purchase price, but I'm going to be putting up somewhere between $1,000 and $5,000 initially, maybe more. If I'm buying a $2 or $3 million storage facility, it could potentially be 10, 15, maybe 20 grand on the high end. As a buyer, I want that number to be as low as possible, but not so low that you don't even look reputable, especially if there's a broker involved, especially if the seller has an attorney or a title company, or I should say an attorney representing them. Like, you don't want to throw up a $10 deposit on a purchase and sale agreement to go buy a storage facility, or $100. Now, in your case, you're buying a facility under $200,000. I think $1,000 to $2,000 is perfectly fine, right? And then more times than not, depending on what it says on the purchase and sale agreement, you're going to have anywhere between 24 and 72 hours, I would say on average, to deposit that money with the escrow agent / title company. You don't want to send that via check by mail because you do have a certain window in which you have to get that in. So I would send the wire, which is what I typically do. When it comes to wires, by the way, this is so important. Triple, quadruple check the wiring instructions. I always like to Google the name of the title company, and then I will call the phone number that I find on Google and verify the wiring instructions that way. If you ever receive wiring instructions via email, never, ever, ever just assume those are the correct wiring instructions. It is insane how much wire fraud is going on in this country, in the world, really, where people hack emails, they modify wiring instructions, and brother, I've heard nightmare stories. You send the wire and you didn't verify it and it goes into the wrong account, good luck getting it back. Like, so I want to just kind of pause for a second and make sure that I stress the importance of double, triple, quadruple checking wiring instructions. Just a good general practice and rule of thumb.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Is the escrow and title company usually the same company? They do escrow and
yeah, it depends on the state, right? So in some states, it's title companies. Like in Florida, we work with title companies. Okay. So what I mean by a title company is there's an attorney handling the file, right? And in other states, it might be an escrow agent who's not necessarily a licensed attorney, but they have a license to be able to close real estate deals and handle title and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, unless you're paying hourly, which I don't advise, like we talked about, you're not going to pay them anything up front. Everything, like what they're going to earn is going to be at the closing table on the HUD, on the settlement statement.
It's confusing. This attorney that I'm working with on this deal came recommended, and they wanted to use their escrow agent that they know, and they were asking for payment up front. And I'm like,
payment up front for what exactly?
To facilitate the escrow earnest money deposit account. Yeah.
No. Now, if you're hiring them specifically to review the purchase and sale agreement, then yeah, they may require some payment up front if you've hired them to review the agreement. But look, I'm in the process of selling one of my storage facilities, and I hired my Florida attorney, who I have a great relationship with. And I paid him a flat fee to handle everything on my behalf, from reviewing the purchase and sale agreement to representing us through the whole transaction, everything.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. I have learned from mistakes on this one.
Yeah.
Failed forward, though.
Well, man, look, to your credit, you've done more than most would do, because, look, while now you have more clarity and confidence moving forward, I'm glad that you didn't just like freeze and then not take some sort of action. The other thing I would advise and recommend, man, is you expressed some of these challenges a little bit late in the game versus earlier on. Like, there was a lot of things that you did on your own without, I don't want to say checking in with me. That's not the spirit of the statement, but like you got very far along in the process before I was even able to like advise you, like, hey, I wouldn't do that. Or you just took massive imperfect action, which is great, because that's what I always say. But yeah, you got a little bit out in front of your skis, so to speak, on this one, in terms of doing things that I wouldn't necessarily recommend. And That's all right, brother. Like, now you know. Uh, by the way, you coming on here and being a part of this season, and this episode is just another example of the power of you being vulnerable, putting yourself out there, because not only is it helping you, but it's helping others, and that will come back to you, man, in a positive way. Because
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know, as cliche as it sounds. You
I
know?
thought I was I thought I was handling things, and then, you know, it would have been more helpful to get Alex involved earlier on this one,
Yeah.
but it's all good.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, because you're wholesaling this, there's different ways you can do it, and you want to consult with the pros and all that. But like, I always like disclosure. So you want to fully disclose everything to everybody you're working with. But I've done wholesale deals where like I'll put up a deposit, and then when I find the buyer, the buyer's deposit goes into the title company, and then I get reimbursed my deposit. Does that make
Appreciate
sense?
you sharing that. Yeah, I didn't even know to ask that question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can do it that way for sure, because now because that's the end buyer, you definitely want them to put up the EMD, but you don't need two EMDs in the escrow agent.
Right.
Now you can get reimbursed yours,
Yep.
right? Uh, One thing I'm going to share as a disclaimer and kind of a CYA type of thing is that I've wholesaled, man, I don't know, north of 700 real estate deals in my life. And I've wholesaled 3 or 4 storage facilities that I can think of. Laws are changing when it comes to wholesaling and certain disclosures, and even certain states that now don't even allow wholesaling. So you want to make sure that you're up to date with the laws, what you can and can't do. And this is where having an attorney and a professional in your corner can really help. It's it's too easy to do things the right way, that you don't want to just cut corners and then find yourself in a sticky situation. It's never worth it. So make sure that whatever state you're operating in, you're dotting I's, crossing T's, there's disclosures, like you're doing things the right way. Cool?
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Well, yeah, man. You let me know. Did we cover all your questions? Or do you have any others?
How long does it take to, once I've identified who the escrow agent will be and I've spoken with them, do they have to like create an account in my name, and they
They'll
can do
they'll
that like within 24 hours, and then
they'll
I can.
handle that. They'll basically just open up a file. Okay, they'll open up a file. You want to make sure that everything is documented via email. So they're going to ask you for a copy of the. My apologies. They're going to ask you for a copy of the purchase and sale agreement. Okay, and so yeah, they'll open up a file. Like, that's all their internal stuff. But I like to keep everything clean on one email thread. You're not going to necessarily want to order a title and lien search yet until you find the buyer. And then once you do find the buyer, you're the middleman, you're the connective tissue between the seller and the buyer. I don't put the seller and the buyer in contact until it's time for the buyer to do the on-site due diligence. And hopefully you've built rapport and you have a good relationship with the seller, that they recognize this person as somebody who's going to ultimately be the end buyer. So whenever I work with a storage owner and I know I'm going to wholesale the deal, I know I'm not going to be the end buyer, I'll just position it up front and I say, hey, listen, Mr. Seller, I want to be very transparent with you that I am not going to be the end buyer who's going to be operating this deal. I have different people that I work with, that I partner with on certain deals, that end up being the operator, but that doesn't impact the purchase price that I agreed to here. So you want to give them assurances that they're going to get what was promised in terms of the agreement, obviously provided everything checks off during due diligence. But then that way there's no, like, you're not playing that kind of shady game that some wholesalers play, where like they're pretending they're the end buyer, but they're not. Like, I just, it doesn't feel good. Like, don't do it that way, man. So
Yeah. Oh, by
just,
the way,
yeah. Yeah. Don't disclose. Like, like, oh, who's this person? Oh, this is like my partner who's going to go out there. But then you have like not just one partner, but you got like 47 partners that want to go out there. And it's just weird. And it's not honest and just not the way that I like to do things. Um, and so, yeah, man. Now, look, if you're under contract and you're just not sure and it could go either way, like you're not sure, well, then that is what it is. Like if you genuinely think that you might be the end buyer, but if you got the right wholesale fee, then it would make sense. Sometimes I can see that being the case. But keep in mind, once you go under contract, you're going to want to perform on-site due diligence pretty quickly thereafter. So you need to decide if you want to wholesale this thing or if you're going to be the one buying it. If you're going to wholesale it, unless the property's within a 2 or 3 hour drive distance of where you live, you're probably not going to hop on a flight to go see this thing if you're just going to wholesale it.
Right.
Now, you are going to want to hire somebody, like a boots on the ground type person, to go out and take really, really, really good pictures and video of the facility so that you can use that in your marketing.
Interesting. Okay.
I did that in one of the facilities that I wholesaled. I hired somebody for, I think, like $150. They went out there, they got really, really good pictures, drone footage, like professional pictures, and I got them, and now I could use that in my marketing.
Wow. How do you find that person?
Brother. Okay, let me
What
ask
kind of person do you look for? I mean, I've heard of the internet.
a
Yeah.
photographer. A photographer.
Yeah. For $150.
Yeah,
Further time.
this was in a super small market. Yeah, $150. It might cost you $200 to $300. I wouldn't pay more than that, you know. But yeah, oh, you already know the answer. Where do you find that person? If I online,
Obviously online, but
online and or referrals.
Yeah, more the point being, what do you look for?
Photographer.
In it?
Don't overthink it. You just want pictures.
I just
Photographer.
assumed a photographer would be more expensive than that.
Not necessarily. Depends on what part. Like, look, we had professional pictures taken for our facility in Amelia Islands, and I think we paid $300 or $350, and that's a high end market where the medium household income I think is like 130, 140 grand. We paid 300, maybe $350, and that came with some drone pictures as well. So, yeah, man, don't overthink it. But as a wholesaler, you should not have very many upfront expenses. Maybe the cost of a photographer, the earnest money that you put up. Outside of that, it's just more time and energy.
Great stuff. Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yep, it is.
Yeah. And look, and I know plenty of people that have wholesaled. Like, look, the storage winner that has wholesaled 4 facilities, I don't believe he's hired a photographer. In fact, I think in one case he had the seller send him pictures. In another case, these were within a drive distance. So he went out there, he took pictures on his smartphone. Brother, you could totally do that. You could totally do that. Like, if you have a really good smartphone and you're within a drive distance, great. If not, the benefit to you is that you have a lot of storage winners within the community across the country. Like, online in our system, you can click on the map and you'll see where everybody's located in the country. Like, depending on where it's located, you might find somebody that can go out there and do it for you. You got plenty of resources of ways to get your hands on quality pictures.
Awesome.
Don't skimp out on that and get some like fuzzy, grainy pictures and then use those as marketing. It's you're cutting corners and it's not worth it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. I didn't know about the photographer part, so thank you.
All good. All good. Now you do, man. Do you feel like you have more? My goal here for you and everybody listening was to give you more clarity and confidence about big picture, the process, and then how to work with a title company, escrow agent, when certain things happen in the process.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, the last thing I'll mention, Dan, don't make the mistake that a lot of first-time wholesalers make, where they feel like they've done their job once they get the deal under contract, once they find the buyer, and then they connect them to the title company. And then it's like, okay, well, like, title company, let me know when closing is. Like, no. You need to be like I said, the connective tissue. You need to be almost then transition to put on the transaction coordinator hat on, where you're in constant communication with the seller, with the buyer, with the title company, with everybody, going on. And you want to make sure that you're working with a buyer that you have a certain level of trust and rapport with, because at some point they're going to go and do the on-site due diligence and they may be in contact or communication with the seller. You want to make sure it's somebody that you guys are aligned. It's not somebody who's going to try to like screw you, go behind your back, anything like that. Now, again, you're going to have it under contract anyway, but still, like, you just don't want, unfortunately, there's unscrupulous people out there that will play games. And so that's the benefit of investing in relationships and with people, so that when it comes time, like, you can get a resource, a referral. You have a challenge, you know where to get it solved. You have a deal that you want to market or you want to wholesale. You have a list of buyers. You have people you've connected with. You know what they want, what they're looking for, etc. This doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. But these are things that we want to be working on. Keep in mind each week, each month that we're in this business.
It's awesome info.
All right, man. All right.
I'm at a loss because you've answered it all.
All right, beautiful. Well, that's what I wanted. So here's what I'd love to hear as we wrap up this show. What was your biggest insight, takeaway? What'd you learn? What'd you love?
Just understanding the process, the tidbit about it should be paid at closing, that settlement fee to the escrow agent and not up front, because I was expecting to pay that up front, and just clarity.
Okay, perfect, man.
On the process.
Well, that's my job, man. So I'm glad you got what you needed. All right, brother. Well, hey, man, listen, let's continue on in your journey here. I know you got another deal. Can I say the range of purchase price it's in? I think you're working on a $3 million deal.
I am.
All right, you're working on a $3 million. Right before we started recording, you're like, hey, man, I think I got something where the numbers work, about $3 million. So I'm excited. Why don't we do this? Why don't we dive into that and anything else that you might want to cover on the next show?
Sounds great.
All right. Awesome, guys. Well, hey, listen, make sure as we wrap here, make sure that you're subscribed on the YouTube channel, on the Storage Wins podcast. Share this with somebody who you think might benefit. Tag us. Let's engage in a conversation online. Hopefully you're part of the Storage Wins Facebook group. You can follow me on Facebook, on Instagram at AlexPardo25. And if there's anything that you need or something that you might want to hear about from myself or Dan in an upcoming episode, find us on socials, let us know, and we look forward to connecting with you on the next one. Take care.
Thank you, Alex.